Hello, Enterprise Education Conference Online. What a real pleasure it is to address you again. Sally Brown here alongside my colleague Kay Samble, and together we've been working all summer on aspects of making assessment future fit, ensuring authentic assessment approaches in the light of coronavirus changes to higher education practice. Because by George, what a summer it's been, hasn't it? It's been, and I'm going to use this word only once, it's been an unprecedented year, and we have had to move fast to make changes as we went along. The world did indeed change in the spring of this year, and just about every university worldwide had to rethink how to offer assessment at a time when it simply wasn't possible for most students to get onto campus for live face-to-face exams. And this has brought about the kind of radical restructuring of higher education that lots of us who are passionate about assessment, like Kay and me, and in particular assessment that is integral to learning, that's really fit for purpose, have not had chances before to do. And what this means is now we have a real chance to shake up higher education assessment long term, because as far as we're concerned, just going back to doing it the same old just is not good enough. Everyone's been really affected by all this. Students have had a tough time trying to deal with dreadful broadband access, very often not much kit, shared kit with other family members, caring responsibilities, nowhere really peaceful to work, people telling us that they've been working on ironing boards and in cupboards under the stairs. And alongside that, everybody's been anxious, haven't they? We've all been anxious. They've been flexible this year, but I worry about the autumn because they won't always be so forgiving. And university staff, similarly, let's not forget all the categories of staff: academics, learning support staff, librarians, quality assurers, educational developers, career staff. Lots of us have all had to move very fast. And we've had the same kinds of things to put up with in our backgrounds. Now, we've pulled it off, but we don't ever want to be in that position again. And the senior managers attempting to lead universities in these difficult conditions have also had to turn to experts in the field. Not all vice-chancellors actually have strong backgrounds in pedagogic scholarship, and they've relied on people like us, people with technology expertise and so on, to make it all workable. Some of you may be familiar with our resources. Kay and I have written over the time from 23rd of March, 2nd of April, 1st of June, 17th of August, 21st of August, lots and lots of resources that we've been delighted have been used very widely. The easiest place to find them is on either of our websites, but a quick link is given to you here below. And basically they talk you through the 4 phases of our work. They show you what kinds of things we've been trying to do. So our 4 phases are, first of all, dealing with everything in emergency conditions, and then looking at alternate formats, for example, face-to-face exams through open book exams, and then looking at workable alternatives to exams. And in that 3rd paper, the 1st of June, we came up with some handy pros and cons of using different kinds of assessment. And then the last 2 and the next ones, which are in the writing, they're about thinking through a real future focus, how to make these changes long term. And that last one particularly is one that might be very relevant to people at this conference. Those of us who are making strenuous efforts to change things in higher education have been able to input in ways we haven't all been able to do in the past. We've been thinking for many years that traditional unseen time-constrained exams, which many regard as the gold standard, including ministers for education in the UK at the moment, as being the best way to assess, they're actually not that good. And our chance to replace them means that we might make some real differences in the way that enterprise educators and others have been arguing for years. This is our big chance.
Hello everyone, Kay Sambell here. So Sally and I have been doing a lot of thinking about finding assessments to replace the traditional time-constrained exam that are a lot more authentic, and people have been doing this, of course, recently at great speed. Now, this is useful in a way because, by contrast, authentic assessment sends much stronger positive messages to students that taking part in assessment tasks itself is much more worthwhile than simply trying to pass a test to get a fistful of marks. And that has a powerful impact on the sort of learning they then aim to achieve. So we've delved into the literature on authentic assessment and tried to sketch out some of the key dimensions on this slide in front of you now. And I think they'll really resonate with enterprise educators, because on the top left, you'll see authentic assessment has two important features. Firstly, it feels much more like the kinds of tasks and situations that you face in the real world. In other words, students can see the links between what they're learning or doing now in the university and the world outside the university. So they see learning or getting involved in authentic tasks as strongly being associated with the kinds of things they can see themselves doing in the longer term. It seems relevant and real rather than artificial and arbitrary as exams sometimes feel. And secondly, we know that assessment is most productive if it resonates with students' own individual interests and their personal concerns, so that they feel a sense of ownership and a commitment to engage in a task rather than just slavishly following through what somebody else has set, where they feel they're just going through the motions. So authentic assessment taps into and fosters personal interest, personal meaning. So students are engaging in real issues and problems. So instead of everyone doing the same thing, authentic assessment might, for instance, include an element of choice, for instance, around the topic or approach that you can take. And this can be highly motivating and engaging. So these two things, which you'll see in green at the top left, personal commitment and relevance, can of course link directly to the world of work itself and employability in people's heads. And that's especially strong in some courses which are professionally oriented. But the literature also tells us that authentic assessment has so much more to offer. And I imagine this will really chime with you guys as enterprise educators, because it presents students with a real sense of challenge, so that tasks clearly require deep approaches to learning, where students make sense of stuff rather than cramming knowledge into their heads so they can spout it back, or gathering information just to put it in an essay. Authentic assessment tasks really require students to get to grips with ideas and concepts and demand the development of the kinds of things which will make students future fit. When, let's face it, universities are actually preparing current students for situations and issues and problems that don't yet even exist. And given the rapid rate of change in the world today, they'll need to work with tech, for instance, that hasn't even been invented yet, and they'll be facing social issues we can't even imagine at the moment. So we need assessment tasks which help students learn to, for instance, apply their knowledge to real-world issues, develop their creativity, learn to formulate problems, not just solve them, because that's what's going to stand them in good stead when they're facing uncertainty and novelty in the future. Stuff which gives them the chance to see new perspectives and diverse ways of doing things rather than just learning to follow the procedures that they're being taught, so that they actually start to think and practice like an engineer or like a nurse or whatever, rather than just trying to remember a bunch of stuff. So on the right-hand side of the diagram, authentic assessment tasks also help students to develop not just their skills and competencies, but professional identities and a sense of agency and empowerment, which is going to equip them for the changes they're bound to encounter in future. And authentic assessment tasks instill a sense of ethical responsibility for and a kind of ownership of and a professional pride in their work, rather than simply requiring invigilators to police and survey and monitor them to check they're not cheating. And really importantly, students need ample opportunity to learn to give and seek and use feedback processes, which are much more like they'll experience in the real world than the models that are sometimes in higher education. And they need to learn to make judgments about the quality and the worth of others' work and their own work while they're actually doing it. These last 2 points are really important because these are vital skills and dispositions which underpin the self-regulatory behaviours of a graduate when, after all, they won't have a tutor or similar peering over their shoulder to tell them what to do next. So assessment tasks which do everything possible to foster these attributes will best help our students become future fit.
Now, here in the next session, what I'd like you to do is I'm just going to ask you to think for a short while about what kinds of authentic assessment you'd like to see being used instead of some of the old traditional methods. You'll all have used lots. I know several of you published on these areas, and I know some of you will be presenting at this conference on those areas. So I want you to just take a few moments to have a think about what kinds of things you would prefer to see. And I'm just going to count down from 25 while you're doing that. 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Imagine you've come up with all kinds of things with my nice, peaceful, soothing voice going on in the background. Let's have a look at some Kay and I have thought about. Here then are some of the things that Kay and I have been thinking about and indeed writing about. And if you have a look at our paper, which was the 1st of June on the changing face of landscape, that's the one that has all sorts of pros and cons of a lot of these methods and some more. So why not use patchwork assessment or infographics or publications of various kinds, teaching packs or leaflets or public information leaflets or even journal articles? What about using take-home papers or storyboards or mind maps? Really what we need is a whole range of different kinds of assessment that are going to help to make assessment in itself more meaningful. And here is the amazing infographic that Katrina Swanton of Edinburgh Napier University, and you can see her Twitter handle underneath the two caricatures, Swanton Sketches. What she's done is, through this explainer, has shown the stages we suggest that you should be using in order to think through how you're going to make new kinds of assessment really effectively. You need to have the learning outcomes, which lead to the verbs, and then we have to find out what verbs then result in. So what is it you're going to ask people to do? And then that will lead to the outcomes or the evidence of achievement. And that needs to be wrapped around with subject specific or discipline specific or profession specific context. Have a look at that paper and see how we try and show that you don't have to start from scratch every single time. We think it's tremendously important, and we know you'll be with us here, that we do need to engage students with us on this kind of thing. So we need them to be able to design briefings with us. They might be able to help us risk assess and problem check our assignments about which difficulties some students may have due to disabilities or other matter. They might help us have a reality check on technologies and applications, and they also might advise us on what kind of feedback might be helpful on risk placement assessments. So we're concluding by saying things can never be the same. Now's our chance to be radical, innovative, and powerful. This is about making assessment truly for learning, and what we all need to do now is work together to re-engineer assessment for the future. We must make a difference long term.